Hello and welcome to Makala's Makala podcast channel. Makala, meaning branches, Kasisuthu. My name is Amanda Masondo and I'm your host. We hope this podcast finds a way to impact, educate, and inspire your next. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Buzzsprout. Basically everywhere where you find your podcast fix. Every first and last Friday of every month. Hello and welcome to Hikima Council. This is the podcast series. My name is Amanda Masondo and I'm your host. As usual, we hope that this podcast finds a way to impact, educate, and inspire your next. My guest this afternoon is Mathabe Molise. She's the Beauty on Tap and pastry founder. Welcome, Mathebe.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have this conversation. Been wanting to have you here. Before we get started into the intricacies of your business, I just wanted to get a sense of the woman behind Beauty on Tap. Who are you? Where were you born and raised? And do you think that your journey has impacted how you do business?
So I'm actually born and raised Johannesburg, which is super weird because people are like, "How are you from Joburg?"
No, it's not. We are from
We're from
Joburg.
here.
Yeah.
They say, "Where do you go for Christmas?" I'm like, to my aunt's house down the road. So I'm born and bred Joburg. I grew up here with my whole family. I went to one school my whole life. So I'm pretty stable and a bit boring. Don't like, change. I come from a very matriarchal family, very strong women as well. And I've just always had a knack for creativity, but I also have a very mathsy brain. That's why I became an accountant. But I love creativity. I always say to people I love baking, hence the name pastry for the skincare brand. I love fitness. I love pushing myself. And that's pretty much me. When people say, "What's your hobby?" I don't think I have a hobby, I'm just like,
You're doing life.
I'm like, I like walking. And that's me. I'm like a bubbly person. I'm an introverted extrovert, if that makes sense. And yeah, that's pretty much me.
Fantastic. Do you think you remember when the entrepreneurial bug bit you?
I was actually talking about it the other day. I remember the exact situation or scenario. So I thought I had grown dolls and I had a whole lot of hobbies and stuff. And I was like, I need money. I promised my friends my keeps or something. And I was like, okay, I have a plan. Let me go sell my dolls. And I sold all my dolls and I sold like a Barbie for like 5 rand or something. And I got home and my grandmother was like, "Where are your dolls?" And I was like, "I sold them because I needed money." And she was like, "You better go get all those dolls back and give the people back their money." So that's the first time I kind of like thought about like, how can I make money quickly? So that was my first memory. And I think at the time I was probably like 6 or 7.
Hectic.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So Beauty on Tap and pastry. Tell me how that came about. So what is it and what do you provide to your customers?
So Beauty on Tap started out as a find a beauty service application. It launched in 2015, but we also had a find a product side of the app. And basically people had to contact like independent beauty product providers or suppliers to go buy and log onto their websites, and they'd say, I want a hairspray from this brand and then a butter from this brand. It doesn't make sense, so why don't you guys just sell everything on your app, like be an aggregator of all these products. And a year after launching the app, and after a year of not making any money because monetizing apps is so hard, we launched the e-commerce website, which at the time had a huge focus on hair care, and since then has evolved more into a skincare destination, with a lot of local hair care brands still, which is really amazing because that's our whole ethos, is bringing local beauty brands to the fore and giving them a shop front, as we say. And then obviously over the years, we've built such a strong community of like customers, social media followers. So we call them our community, our besties. And they used to say that they want a body care range with active ingredients. So like a body butter or body lotion that can help clear blemishes. And after looking in the market, there wasn't really anything. And that's when Pastry Skincare was born. So Pastry Skincare is basically Beauty on Tap's big baby. It's actually grown quite a lot over the past 2 years. So that's how both brands came about.
Sure. So I think I've heard you mention on other platforms the concept of an e-tailer. Can you share more about that?
So I learned in my former career that e-commerce isn't, a lot of people think e-commerce is a platform where you can buy and sell products. So they link e-commerce more to buying, like from Amazon and your other big retailers. But e-tailing is more like the retailing side of it. So e-commerce can be gaming, it can be your social media platforms, that's all commerce. So e-tailing speaks more to your ability to buy and kind of barter products for money on a platform. So e-tailing is kind of like a subsegment of e-commerce.
That makes sense. Now we're all on par.
Got together now.
So you went from accountant to entrepreneur.
Yes.
How did that happen? And what upper hand or perspective do you think that's given you in the decisions that you make in your business now?
So I think I've always had an entrepreneur in me because I've always tried starting little businesses over the years, from selling my dolls to I also had a little party planning business that I started, and then I had my baking business. So the entrepreneur in me has always been there, but I suppose over the years it's always been like a side hustle in me. And so I spent 11 years in corporate. I spent 3 years doing my articles, and then 8 years in banking. But I think it was really important for me to journey through a career in corporate, because I learned so much there. I learned about work ethic, processes, controls, building a culture in a business and so on. And so for me, I think, the transition more from going from being an employee to leading a business was kind of hard, but it was really great that I could kind of export my skills that I learned in corporate into my entrepreneurship journey. So the transition wasn't too bad, but over the past year, it's been a year and 2 months, I've learned a lot about myself as well as an entrepreneur. So there's different skill sets and personality traits that I've had to pull out to
tap into.
Yeah.
So then now you are the boss, you are in charge. So how's that been? How's that? First take us through so how many people that you have in your team, and then how sort of your leadership personality is that to come out, and what that you think that is.
So I sit like this. I'm just so in my career, I never had a leadership role. I worked, at the end of my banking career, I worked alongside the CEO of a bank. I was his executive assistant. So I was kind of always the second in charge. But the two I see to the CEO, and before that was the head of the African banking business. So I never really had a leadership role, and so having to go into a role where I was fully a leader now was really hard. And there was so much that I had to kind of dial down in my own personality. I know I'm impatient. I'm a very impatient person. I had to learn patience. I know I can be bossy. I had to learn a lot of empathy as well. But I also had to learn boundaries. I had to learn how to crack the whip, because I'm a nice person, I think. I had to learn that you have to separate the niceness from your business, and there are times when you can bring those two personality traits together. So I'm a nice boss, I think. I'm cool. I really love that people bring their own personalities to the business. I celebrate everybody individually in the business as well, but I'm somebody who really believes in pushing people and making sure people get to the career heights that they want to get to. So I'm super invested in people's career development and just making them feel at home in the business.
That is very important.
Yeah.
I can't it's so important about it as an employee.
Yeah.
It's very essential. Okay, let's talk about South Africa in its current form, the economic landscape. How would you describe the state of entrepreneurship right now, considering some of the headwinds from the pandemic, the July unrest, the electricity crisis, inflation, interest rates? In that sense, how would you describe that sector, that situation right now as an entrepreneur?
Sure. Yeah, it's heavy times, but I always say that from storms there are a lot of opportunities of sun rays that you need to kind of like grab at. Every time I say yes, Beauty on Tap is growing, it's doing well, but I always say I don't know how much better if it would be if we had a functional economy that's actually growing. Maybe the business would be much bigger than it is right now, but I don't know how to measure that. And for me, that oblivion or not having insight into that kind of pushes me and gives me hope and kind of like makes me want to see what more can be done. So I think, if you're an entrepreneur who's in this current economic landscape and you have like a little spark and you can see your business is growing, don't look at the woes, look at the hope and say, oh gosh, if the economy was functioning, how much bigger could I be? And that kind of keeps you on track to say, let me keep growing this business, because if things should turn, then I'm in a really, really great position. So, there's obviously points where it becomes expensive because now you have to, our rental invoice now all of a sudden has a diesel charge for the generators. And probably our store invoice is also going to have a diesel charge because, the mall that we're at just started getting load shedding. So, there's certain things that are like disheartening, like, oh, it's so much more expensive to run this business. But as I say, it's the hope that keeps me going to say, oh my word, if things turn around, then we're in the right position. So, I see a lot of young people starting amazing businesses and they're constantly pushing and, having access to things like internet and just having resources that make it easier should keep people motivated to just keep going.
Very good. 100%. So before you got started, did you find that there were factors that prevented you from fully immersing yourself into the e-commerce sector? Did you think that there were some barriers to entry that made it a little bit difficult for you to navigate that space?
100%. So, when we started in 2015, it was app development, and there weren't a lot of app developers at the time. And the cost of getting an app developed then was so expensive just because the skill was so scarce. And so I'm an accountant. I don't have coding skills. I should have coding skills, but I don't. And that's something that I need to do. So I had to outsource the service, and even just building a website, I have to outsource that service because I don't know how to do it. And the other things that I want to focus on in the business than the IT side of it. So it's important for me to have the right people running the tech side of the business. So that was really, really difficult and was a barrier for me. And it's probably a barrier for a lot of people because there are probably a lot of people out there who have app ideas, who have website ideas, but don't necessarily have the funds to build an app, for instance. And so for me, I think getting that done was really hard. And also just being like, a young Black female at the time, was still young. I think convincing people to like back you, like a lot of brands, it was really hard. You really have to prove yourself. So, it's been a journey, but we finally got there. And, hopefully now with more IT skills and a lot more coders in the market, it's becoming a little bit more accessible for businesses to build e-commerce businesses and platforms, especially for young entrepreneurs.
Okay, so we talk about entrepreneurs being the economy of tomorrow. They're the ones that are going to solve our unemployment crisis. They're the ones, they are the future economies of the country. Do you think that we do enough as a country, as societies, as communities, to sort of plow back into entrepreneurs? And what would you like to see more of?
I always talk to other entrepreneurs, and people talk about how easy it is to get funding and all that kind of stuff, but I wish that businesses that are doing okay were backed a lot more. If you have a proof of concept that's doing well, then I think you should get support just from government to say, okay, cool, we're going to support you, we're going to back you because we can see you're creating jobs. So, if we had a little bit more backing, I think a lot of businesses would actually fly. And there are a lot of businesses that have really great ideas that can create those jobs. But more so, I always say to people that I think South Africa can be an e-commerce hub for the continent. We have so many big companies here, brands that people want access to on the continent. Like people go shopping in like France from Nigeria, whereas like if we actually become our own e-commerce hub and ship into other countries, we can, grow our economy and be that port of shopping on the continent. So, I have a lot of like ideas on how we can transform South Africa through the e-commerce landscape. Lot of things to write for.
And this is why you are here.
Exactly.
It's the right people. Okay. So then the pandemic forced businesses to tap into exploring e-commerce tools, and whether to upscale or to be able to do business. You were already in that space and had been for a while. Do you think that gave you a bit of an edge when you started?
Yeah, of course. So for us, it was like, so Beauty on Tap grew like a lot during the pandemic, and that's what kind of like pushed the business to like grow even now. And it was just like right time, right place, right platform kind of thing. People couldn't go out and shop. People couldn't go to hair salons. They couldn't go do facials.
I remember.
So we were just a platform that had local and affordable brands accessible to people, and we were delivering super fast. And so COVID actually helped our business, but I think because I was so pedantic about having a great user experience on our website and fast delivery, we kind of became like a go-to e-commerce platform or e-tailer for people to buy those products that they needed. So I think it was like a combination of things that kind of positioned us well to grow during that period.
We utilized your platform, yes. It helped us quite a lot in that period. So historically, the beauty sector has been dominated by big international conglomerates. Has that changed in any way? And what do you think needs to happen to get those doors open so that we can sort of dominate that industry?
So I've seen internationally that a lot of big beauty conglomerates are being given a run for their money by like startup brands. Some of those startup brands are obviously backed by really big companies, but it just shows that diversity and inclusivity in the beauty industry is really important, and people want brands that speak to them a lot more. And so when you bring that to a South African or African context, if you want diversity and inclusivity and brands that speak to the African community a lot more, it means that you're formulating for African skin, that you're considering them in your ads, that you're considering them in how you speak to your customers. And so for me, there's still a lot of opportunity for a lot more brands to come into the beauty industry in South Africa. And I think that it's important for us to have those brands. We've seen a lot of brands coming up. I mean, Beauty on Tap is majority local brands. We have a few international brands on our website that also do well. But the local brand aspect is really important, and they're doing really well. So we need to see a lot more of those brands come to the fore.
And in terms of locally, do you see a lot of our, we won't mention any names, but some of the big beauty brands have been getting a lot of slack on social media about not having specifically Black products or moving the Black products to the back and that kind of thing. Do you think that there's an opportunity for collaboration, more collaboration locally, for it to push those barriers?
Yeah, so I think, owning pastry skincare. So pastry skincare gives me a completely different view of the landscape, because it's obviously a brand that other retailers want in store. So there is a big push to get more local brands into big retailers, whether it's putting with the bottom shelves or like the middle shelves, or
as long as it's on a shelf.
Yeah, but for me it's not that. It's like you need to, with the store and merchandising and shelving stuff, it's really important to make sure that local brands are positioned well in stores and that people can see them. So I think there's a lot more work that can be done with regards to that. There's so many brands that still fight for shelf space, and that's what Beauty on Tap is. It's a store that believes in local brands and wants to give local brands shelf space. Like, when we opened our Mall of Africa store, so many brands were so excited, like, oh my word, I'm in a mall, because they've never had that opportunity. So there's still a lot more that can be done, but there are baby steps that are being taken in that regard.
Fantastic. You've opened up a store. Exciting. How has the market received you, and what nudged you to take that step?
So opening a store was a risk that I had to take. So for a while, the Beauty on Tap community has been asking for a store. And for me, e-commerce is such a lean model. It's like the business runs itself. Like you get orders come through, you pack them and they ship. A store now, you have to have a whole lot of people. You have to pay rent. I mean, there's no e-commerce rent. It's like your hosting fee, which is, much lower than rent. So, I mean, opening a store was really scary, but I think because we already had a community built online, translating that and pushing those customers now to a store was much easier because the brand was already known to people. So I think that comfort was there, and so far the store has been doing really, really well. I've been quite surprised. When I did the forecasts, I completely lowballed it. It's been so well received, and I think South Africans have kind of been waiting for a store like Beauty on Tap. So shout out to the team.
Amazing. Shout out to the team indeed. Do you have stats maybe that you have put together for yourselves that indicate who your customer base is? I know that, first of all, online is really a tricky discussion to have in a country where people don't have access to internet or even a phone that charges, so that we can electricity wise and that kind of stuff. So who's your customer base?
So I think our customer base, so I thought it was 80% female. It's probably 85% female. And of that 85%, probably 80% Black female. So it's a lot of Black females in urban areas, and who spend about 1,000 rands per basket on shopping on average. But that dynamic is fundamentally changing. We can see that shift a bit. And what's quite interesting is that with load shedding, people turn to their phones for entertainment. So during load shedding, people tend to shop a lot more. So that's why I say that people shouldn't be disheartened by things like load shedding, because there are opportunities. During load shedding, people game on their phones. So it's obviously people there with smartphones, urban areas, and it is Black female majority.
You just summed up the economy. That's the economy. That's who's buying stuff
That
time.
That is who's buying stuff. And I always say to people, like, the Beauty on Tap community funded the store, and it's just been people buying more, increasing their baskets. When you journey with somebody from university up through to them working, you just see their basket size increase. So that's who's running the economy. Truth be told.
I don't think we spend enough time checking in with entrepreneurs about their confidence in doing business in South Africa. I know that there's lots of organizations do a lot of like, for instance, Psyche does a business conference where they speak to big business about their thoughts on what's going on and whether or not they feel like there is opportunities and growth. Do we tap? So what is your stance on doing business in South Africa at the moment? Are we alive with possibility? Or do you still think that there's certain things that we need to work on? And are you already looking for global scale?
So, as I said earlier, if you don't know, then you don't have woes. Like, you don't know, like, I wish I was in another country. Whereas those foreign investors have insights into how their companies operate in Dubai and the US versus South Africa. So they have that insight to say our confidence in terms of SA is low. But for me, it's like, I love this country. I see opportunity. I see a growing market. I see, I don't know. I just have a lot of hope about South Africa. I've only felt, like a bit down once when we went into stage 6, and then I think I didn't have water for like 36 hours. And the rand tumbled. That was the one day where I was like, oh my gosh, onto the clouds.
I'm moving to Australia.
I'm moving to Australia right now. But I think there is a lot of opportunity still in South Africa, and I would still start a business. I still look for other opportunities within, the beauty sphere or outside of it, because I do think there's still a lot of opportunity here.
I love to hear it. Some positivity. Love to hear it. Okay, let's go back a little bit. Knowing what you know now, your journey as an accountant, struggling through e-commerce, finally getting it right, opening up a store, would you do anything different?
I would do some things different. The one thing that I always say that I would do differently is I would have taken risks a lot earlier. I've always been very risk averse and very scared of doing things. But obviously things happen the way they're supposed to happen, and the timing is right for everything. But I wish I'd been a little bit more gutsy and brave at the beginning. And that I think that would have opened a lot more doors, and obviously would have had more failures, but those are failures that I would have grown from as well. But yeah, I think the way that things have unfolded in Beauty on Tap has happened beautifully. There's stuff that's happened at the beginning that was like risky and didn't work out, and I kind of learned from it. So every single thing that doesn't really work out, I learn from it and I try and fix it somehow.
Okay. What's next for Beauty on Tap?
Who knows? You tell me.
Continental, international listing.
Beauty on Tap of Los Angeles. No, obviously we want to open more stores, but not 200. We still want to keep it as niche as possible, because I think if you stay niche, then you're able to just maintain that culture and great customer service. So it's opening more stores, hopefully launching more brands, buying into more brands, and getting more brands onto Beauty on Tap. And just taking over Africa. I think there's a lot of scope for us to open more stores on the continent and just be Sephora's competitor. That's next.
So I said in the beginning, this podcast is about being impactful, educating, and inspiring. If you could give entrepreneurs who are listening 3 tips that you feel have really been helpful for you as you're busy navigating. Obviously, you're still learning, but as you're busy what will those things be?
So my first tip, which is really important, is always look at the books. Like, your finances are crucial. Like, make sure that you're doing profit analysis, margin analysis. Make sure that the money that you're making makes sense, and in that, don't take money out of your business. Like, your business needs to grow. You're an employee, get a salary, and then leave money there for things, because I think bad finances is probably what trips a lot of businesses up in the first few years. Number 2 is probably don't rush to grow. I think a lot of people kind of want to push that growth too fast. Whereas if you grow too fast, you kind of lose control of the business. So I think for me, I've always kind of tried to control Beauty on Tap's growth to a point where we can manage it properly and not lose the things that make Beauty on Tap, like great customer service. And then number 3 is probably, if you can, get the right people in your business. You don't know everything. I'm not a jack of all trades. I don't know marketing. I don't know IT. There's certain things that I'm not good at. And so you have to surround yourself with people who can deploy those skills into your business and that you can rely on and delegate to when you need to.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mathabe Molise, Beauty on Tap and pastry founder. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Bye.